I want you to imagine a scenario for me.
Okay, I'm with you.
You get hired to write the ultimate travel guide, let's say, for Japan.
Sounds great. Dream job.
But there are some very strict rules. Rule number 1, you can't actually go to Japan.
Uh-oh.
Rule 2, no photos, no videos. And rule number 3, the only notes you can use are from a couple of guys who went there on a military campaign 450 years ago.
That sounds less like a travel guide and more like a recipe for a lawsuit.
Huh?
Or a very, very confused tourist.
Right. It seems completely made up. But this is basically how we got one of the most important historical texts about ancient India. Today, we are doing a deep dive into Arrian's Indica.
It really is the premier example of what we call armchair ethnography.
Armchair ethnography. I love that term. It sounds kind of cozy, but also a little bit lazy, like he just couldn't be bothered to book a trip.
Well, to be fair to Arrian, it wasn't laziness. We're talking about the 2nd century CE here.
Right.
Arrian of Nicomedia wasn't just some guy writing from his study. He was a serious figure. A Greek historian, a Roman consul, a military commander. I mean, he was one of the intellectual heavyweights of his day.
Okay, so a big deal.
A very big deal. But he lived in the Roman Empire, and crossing the Indus River wasn't exactly a weekend getaway.
So he's sitting there in his Roman villa, and he decides to write the definitive guide to India. If he wasn't there, who was he relying on? Because that 4-century gap, that's like me writing a guide to London based on, I don't know, Shakespeare's notes.
That's a great analogy. And it really gets at the challenge he faced. He was performing a kind of forensic synthesis. He had access to a library of texts that, for us, are mostly lost.
So who was his main source?
His biggest source was a man named Megasthenes.
Megasthenes. I feel like I should know that name.
He was a diplomat, a Seleucid ambassador who actually lived at the court of the Mauryan emperor Chandragupta way back in the 4th century BCE.
So Arrian, in the 2nd century CE, is reading the diary of a diplomat from the 4th century BCE to figure out what India is like.
It's like a game of telephone across 5 centuries. But Arrian was trying to be rigorous. He also used Nearchus.
Alexander the Great's admiral.
Yeah, a very one. He'd sailed the coast, and Arrian used Eratosthenes for the geography. He was actively trying to filter out the tall tales and get to the facts.
Okay, so the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to see what that picture actually looks like. What version of India do you get when you mix real observation with a heavy dose of, well, Greek bias?
You get a place that is half real and half fantasy. A place that serves as a fascinating mirror for the Roman world itself.
Let's start with the physical world then. If I'm Arrian unrolling these old scrolls, how do I even visualize India? Does he have a sense of the shape of the subcontinent?
It's surprisingly geometric. He describes the country as a rhomboid.
A rhomboid, like a parallelogram. That seems weirdly specific for ancient geography.
It is specific, but if you look at a map of the subcontinent jutting into the ocean, it's not a terrible approximation for someone who's never seen it from space.
Fair enough.
And he defines the boundaries very clearly. To the west, you have the Indus River.
Which for them was basically the end of the known world.
Pretty much. And he doesn't just call it a river, he compares it to the Nile and the Danube. He's trying to give his Roman readers a sense of scale.
Think of the biggest river you know, then go bigger.
Exactly. And then to the east, he places the Ganges, which he correctly says is even mightier than the Indus.
So he's got the rivers. What's in between?
He calls the region the land of 5 rivers.
Wait, isn't that literally what Punjab means?
Precisely. Panj is 5, Ab is water. It's a description that's stuck for thousands of years. But what really grabs his attention isn't just the water, it's what the water does. He notices the silt, how the rivers are shifting channels, creating new land.
Plus like the Nile in Egypt.
Right, that was their only reference point for that kind of scale.
Yeah.
And that leads to probably the biggest aha moment in the whole text when it comes to the environment. The weather.
The monsoon.
The monsoon. You have to remember, for a Greek or a Roman, summer is the dry season. It's hot, it's dusty.
Right, the idea that summer brings torrential rain is completely backward.
Totally alien. So reading about it must have seemed like a mistake in the notes. But Arrian, or really, his sources nailed it. He describes the summer rains and, more importantly, he gets the economic impact.
The double harvest.
The double harvest. He points out that because of this predictable heat and water, India pulls off an agricultural miracle.
2 harvests a year.
Yes. One crop after the winter, another after the monsoon. To a Roman farmer, that sounds like you've won the lottery. It explains the massive population, the wealthy cities. It's just caloric math. twice the food, twice the people.
That makes a lot of sense. Did he have a theory for why it was so hot there?
He actually tried to use physics. He theorized that the mountains in the north, the Himalayas, were trapping the warm air, preventing the cold northern winds from getting in.
That's a surprisingly scientific, a decent attempt at meteorology.
It really is. He's contrasting the snowy north with the parched plains. And of course, because he's an ancient historian, he tries to map this climate onto the people themselves.
Oh boy. Here we go. The phenotypes discussion.
Yep. He creates a spectrum. The northern Indians, he says, look like Egyptians, lean, taller. The southern Indians, he says, resemble Ethiopians because of their darker skin.
He's trying to build a grand unified theory of humans based on latitude.
Exactly. It's a simplification, for sure, but it shows he's trying to create a coherent system, not just a list of weird things foreigners do. He wants to understand the why.
Speaking of weird things, we have to talk about the gods. Because I was reading the notes on this, and I had to double check I wasn't reading a comic book. Arrian claims the Greek gods were already there.
This is my favorite part of the whole text. It's the classic example of what we call interpretatio Graeca.
Greek interpretation.
Basically Greek goggles. The Greeks had a really hard time accepting that other cultures had unique gods. For them, the gods were universal. So when they saw a foreign deity, they'd say, oh, that's just Zeus in a funny hat.
Or that's obviously Ares.
Right. So who do they find in India?
Dionysus and Heracles.
You got it.
Dionysus, the god of wine and parties.
The very same. Arrian reports, with completely straight face, that Dionysus conquered India long before the Trojan War.
I always pictured Dionysus passing out at a banquet, not leading a military campaign.
Well, in this version, he's a civilizer. He marches in, teaches the Indians how to farm, make wine, build cities. It's a way of saying, look, this civilization is amazing, but only because our God touched it first.
But they must have had some kind of evidence for this, right? They couldn't just say, this place feels like a party, it must be Dionysus.
Oh, they had evidence. And it is hilarious. It's entirely based on a linguistic misunderstanding.
A pun.
A pun. You're telling me a chunk of ancient history was written because of a dad joke?
Pretty much. So Alexander's army finds a mountain called Meros.
Meros, okay.
Now in Greek, the word Meros means thigh.
Thigh. Like your leg.
Yes. And the Greek myth is that Dionysus was born from the thigh of Zeus.
No way.
Oh, yes. So the soldiers see a mountain named Thigh. Then they find ivy growing on it. Ivy was sacred to Dionysus, and it doesn't grow in the rest of India. So they put two and two together and got Dionysus.
They said, look, ivy, a mountain called Thigh. Dionysus was definitely born here. It's confirmation bias on a galactic scale.
That is just incredible.
It gets even better. They found a local tribe, the Nicaeans, who beat drums and wore ivy in their rituals. The Greeks looked at that and said, Bacchic rites, they're worshiping Dionysus.
When in reality, it was probably what?
Probably local shamanic practices, or maybe even early worship related to Shiva. But to the Greeks, everything looks like Greece.
So that's the party god. What about the muscle? You mentioned Heracles.
Right. But Arrian is careful. He says this is an Indian Heracles, distinct from the Greek one. This Heracles clears the land of monsters and builds cities, specifically Mathura.
Mathura. That sounds familiar. Is that Mathura?
Modern-day Mathura, a very real, very ancient city. But the story Arrian tells is pure soap opera. It's all about his daughter, Pandae.
Pandae. That sounds a lot like the Pandean kingdom in the south.
Exactly. The story is that Heracles conquered the south just to give his daughter a kingdom. But the detail Arrian focuses on is the succession. He describes a matrilineal system.
Where the crown passes through the women.
Yes. He claims they did this to preserve the bloodline of Heracles. Now, we know there were matrilineal customs in parts of southern India. So again, he's taking a real observation, women have power here, and wrapping it in a Greek myth. It's because of Heracles, to make it understandable.
He's constantly remixing reality.
It's a total remix. And nowhere is that more apparent than in his description of society.
The caste system.
The caste system, or as he calls it, the 7 classes.
7? I thought the Indian Varna system had 4 main castes.
It does, but Megasthenes and Arrian list 7. This suggests they were just looking from the outside and kind of confusing a person's job with their actual caste.
Yep.
But the way they rank them is fascinating.
Okay, let's run through them. Who's at the very top?
The philosophers.
Not the kings, the philosophers.
He calls them sophists, using a Greek term. These are the Brahmins, and what he calls Garmanes, likely Buddhist or Jain monks. He notes they're tax-exempt, and their only job is to advise the king and perform rituals.
Nice work if you can get it.
Indeed. But the class that really makes you stop is the second one, the farmers.
Why? Farmers are usually pretty low on the totem pole in the ancient world.
Not in Arrian's Indica. He claims the farmers are sacred and inviolable.
Sacred? What does that even mean?
He says that even during a war, soldiers will fight each other, but they won't touch a farmer working in the field right next to the battle. They won't burn the crops.
That sounds incredibly idealized. Like, excuse me, we're just having a brutal sword fight here. Please keep plowing.
It does sound too good to be true, but it was likely an exaggeration of Indian laws of war, which did frown on that sort of thing. But think about why Arrian is highlighting this. In the Greek and Roman world, war meant total war. Burning the enemy's fields was standard procedure.
So he's using this to shame his own people.
That's the theory. He's painting India as a place of superior moral order. He's saying, look at these barbarians. They don't even starve their enemies. What does that say about us?
So we have philosophers and sacred farmers. Who's next?
You have herdsmen, who he says are nomadic. Then artisans and traders, who pay taxes. Then warriors.
As their own class.
Yes, and this is important. Arrian says they are professional soldiers paid by the royal treasury. In peacetime, they just train. They don't have to work. This points to a very wealthy, organized state.
Okay, that's 5. What are the last 2?
Number 6 is where the vibe changes. The overseers, or in Greek, episkopoi.
Overseers. That sounds ominous.
It's basically the Secret Service, state-sponsored spies.
Whoa. We went from sacred farmers to a government surveillance state really fast.
And it captures the reality of the Mauryan Empire. Arrian says they report everything to the king, and he says they never lie. It shows this wasn't just a loose collection of tribes. It was a centralized machine.
And the final class?
The counselors, the judges, the administrators, the ruling elite.
So, looking at this list, it's rigid. You're born into a slot, you stay there.
Yes, he emphasizes that. No intermarriage, no switching jobs.
Yeah.
But then, Arrian drops the biggest bombshell of the entire text. A claim that would have made a Roman reader choke on his wine.
A slavery claim.
Yes. Arrian asserts unequivocally, all Indians are free. There is no slavery in India.
That is massive. I mean, the entire Roman economy ran on slavery. Greece, too. Humans were property. And Arrian is saying this huge, wealthy empire, they don't do that.
It's a revolutionary statement, and he argues this creates a sense of equality and self-worth among the people.
But was it true? Or was this another Dionysus moment?
That's the million-dollar question, modern historians would say. Not exactly. Ancient India definitely had forms of bonded labor, servitude, debt bondage. But, and this is a big but it looked very different from the chattel slavery of the Mediterranean.
Where a slave was a thing, a tool that could speak.
Exactly. In India, the unfree still had social rights within their caste. So to Megasthenes and Arrian, the difference was so stark they just said, slavery doesn't exist here.
It feels like another one of those mirror moments. He's holding this up to his readers and saying, see, civilization doesn't require brutality.
I think that's exactly it. He doubles down on their character, too. He says Indians are tall, proud, and honest. He even mentions they don't use written contracts.
Why not?
Because they trust each other's word. He paints this picture of a high-trust society. He even says they don't have lawsuits.
Okay, now I know it's a utopia, no lawyers. That is definitely a fantasy.
Well, he says they settle disputes quickly. But yes, he portrays a society that is wealthy but not corrupt. He says they avoid luxury, eat simple food like rice, and don't drink wine except for ceremonies.
Which is pretty ironic given the Dionysus connection.
But very. He wants them to be virtuous even if his mythology says they learned to party from a Greek god.
Before we wrap up, we have to talk about the wildlife. The Greeks seemed obsessed with the animals.
Oh, completely. It was like a trip to a magical zoo.
Yeah.
Tigers fiercer than lions, giant serpents. But the star of the show, of course, is the elephant.
Arrian really seems to respect them.
He does. He treats them almost like people. He claims they're as intelligent as humans and form deep bonds with their drivers, the mahouts. But the military details really stand out.
The tanks of the ancient world.
Right. He describes the towers of archers on their backs. But he goes into this incredibly specific detail about how they catch them.
I read this part. It's the femme fatale strategy.
Essentially, yes. They use tame female elephants to lure the wild males into an enclosure. The males get distracted, and then the trap springs.
It's such specific practical detail. It makes you feel like, okay, someone actually watched this happen.
It adds credibility, and Arrian is constantly fighting for that. He explicitly says, I am not listening to Cetesius.
Who was Cetesius?
An earlier writer who turned India into a freak show. He claimed there were dog-headed men and the famous story ants the size of foxes that dug up gold.
Giant gold-digging ants.
Yeah. And Arrian basically says, no, we're doing history here, not fantasy. He includes the elephant capture details to earn your trust, so when he says there's no slavery, you believe him.
He doesn't shy away from the darker stuff either. He mentions the funerals.
True. He mentions excarnation leaving bodies for vultures, which was likely a Zoroastrian practice, and he mentions sati.
The practice of widows burning themselves on the pyre.
Yes. But notice how he frames it, not as barbaric, but as a contest of virtue. He says the women compete for the honor. Even when describing something horrific, he views it through this lens of noble sacrifice.
So, stepping back, we have this text from the 2nd century CE, summarizing a text from the 4th century BCE. Why does this matter to us today?
It matters because the Indica is a bridge. It connects the Roman world of Hadrian to the Mauryan world of Chandragupta, with Alexander in the middle. But more than that, it captures a moment where the West looked at the East and didn't just see enemies.
They saw an equal.
In some ways, a superior. They saw a civilization of abundance, order, philosopher kings, and freedom.
It's that utopian angle again.
It is. Whether or not it was 100% accurate, it tells us everything about what the Greeks and Romans valued. It tells us what they felt was missing in their own society.
That we describe other cultures to highlight the holes in our own.
Precisely. Arrian's India is the dream of what Rome could be.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener. Arrian and the Greeks were obsessed with this idea that India had no slavery. They kept repeating it. They wanted it to be true.
It's the real sticking point of the whole text.
If that was an exaggeration or a misunderstanding, why were they so eager to believe it? Did they look at this massive, wealthy empire functioning without slaves and feel a twinge of guilt? Or was it just a fantasy? A hope that maybe, just maybe, you can have high civilization without human misery powering the engine?
That is the question Arrian leaves us with.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next expedition.